Welcome to the Purple Positivity Podcast for April the 2nd, 2018. I am your host, the amazingly adorable Rebecca Thistle, podcasting to you live-ish from my kitchen/dining room table in my apartment, which I call Jeffrey Thistlework. Yay! So, Monty Python. I made myself laugh. Yesterday I got sad because I was missing my son very much. And so to cheer myself up, I started watching Monty Python's The Holy Grail. Because that's what you do. I mean, nothing makes me happier than being able to say every single line in that movie. And my favorite is, "Come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help! Help! I'm being repressed!" Oh, that's my favorite scene. I love it. Oh, joyousness. So anyways, watching The Holy Grail led to me going, I want to watch the Dead Parrot sketch. So I opened up YouTube, shut down Amazon Video, opened up YouTube, started watching the Dead Parrot sketch, and then went from watching that sketch to another sketch to another sketch to another sketch. And then eventually I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I came across an interview from Talks at Google with John Cleese, who is my favorite Python. I'll be honest. Because back in the day, he looked exactly like my dad. And now that he's old, sorry, Mr. Cleese, but you're old, he looks like my grandfather, before he died. Which is a very dismissive way of honoring my grandfather, but he'd probably laugh, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, so in this interview he did with Talks at Google, he fascinates me with his philosophical ideas and pontifications on life, the universe, and everything. But he starts talking at one point about introversion versus extroversion and creativity and stuff like that. It's a very fascinating thing. I highly recommend you go look it up. I may tweet out a link to it later on today. So follow me on Twitter for that. But it's really interesting. So anyways, he starts talking about, introversion versus extroversion and how nobody is 100% one or the other. And he made this remark about it is possible to be an introverted exhibitionist. And I heard that and I went, oh, that's me. And so now you know why the title of the show. So yes, I started with Monty Python and now we're getting into it. This is why you listen to the show, because you know it's going to have madness, but there's method to it. And I'll get there eventually. And you will enjoy the journey. Yes, not all who wander are lost. Thank you very much. By the way, that's a quote from Tolkien. So, one of the shortcomings, I think, of well, I mean, there's a lot of shortcomings of society and human thinking. But one of them is that we tend, as human beings, we like shortcuts. You know, our brains do so much day to day, and there's always something going on that our brains tend to make shortcuts. So our brains tend to like what I call either or thinking, which is, you know, it's either this or it's that. And if it's this, then ABC. If it's that, then XYZ. You know? We like that black and white either or thinking. Binary ideation. That sounded really smart. But our brains tend to like shortcuts. Problem is, human beings are not either or. We are not one thing or another. We are not ABC or XYZ. We are, what I like to say, both and. So I have a conversation on a regular basis with a friend of mine about introversion versus extroversion. And I don't want to get into the ins and outs of those conversations because that's between us. But one of the things that I get from these conversations is how much people really don't understand about introversion versus extroversion. If you are an introvert, and I am, you are not necessarily antisocial. You are not necessarily shy. You are not necessarily unfriendly. You are not necessarily misanthropic. You are not necessarily socially awkward. Now, you can be, and generally people who are introverted. But it's sort of like saying, you know, all jacuzzis are hot tubs, but not all hot tubs are jacuzzis, sort of thing. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I have social anxiety issues. I'm obviously very socially awkward, and I'm an introvert. But I'm not, I don't have social anxiety and social awkwardness because I'm an introvert. Or no, it's not, I'm an introvert, therefore I'm socially awkward and socially anxious. It's, I'm socially awkward and socially anxious, therefore I'm an introvert, I guess. I'm sort of going off the cuff here. So I may retract this entire show, like, tomorrow and just go, nope, never mind. But, the thing about introversion versus extroversion is how you recharge your batteries. And it is a spectrum. But introverts generally feel refreshed after spending time alone, doing solitary activities. Extroverts generally feel refreshed after being around other people, doing social activities. And everyone, fucking everyone, falls somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. Okay? It's a spectrum. And one of the things that excites me about my generation, the generation coming up behind me, is we're starting to see spectrums. We're starting to see that things are not binary in nature. And that's really cool. So, this friend that I have these conversations about extroversion and introversion with, is fond of saying that I am more extroverted than she is. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, sure. You know, I'm actually more on the introverted side. But yeah, okay. I'm an introverted exhibitionist. And the significance of that is, I find, and I think it's ultimately, how do you recharge your batteries at the end of the day, and what excites you? So I think it's possible, consequently, to be an extroverted voyeur. Or a voyeuristic extrovert would probably be the more poetic way of saying that. Voyeuristic extrovert. But, like, what recharges my battery is solitary activity, generally speaking. I like listening to audiobooks. I like watching shows on Netflix. I like randomly researching crazy stuff, like who the hell is Petrarch? And how do this, writings go, and stuff and things with that. But what excites me is attention. Obviously, I do 2 podcasts, and I'm thinking about starting a 3rd. Clearly, I like attention. I really do. And sometimes it's to my detriment, because, when I don't feel like I'm getting enough attention, then I start doing random things that annoy the crap out of people. So, it takes a lot of self-control for me to be like, no, it is so hard for me to not spend half my day texting someone every random thought that pops into my head, just because I want him to respond, because I like that attention. And that's not fair to him. So but that's what excites me, is getting that attention. So that's sometimes why I end up starting random conversations with random people on Snapchat, or drunk tweeting Whitey Cracker and Luke Daniels and stuff like that, because I like attention. But at the end of the day, what recharges my battery is sitting down and reading Shakespeare, or watching a documentary about druids, or, just something that I do by myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. And just, and like I said, I think it's consequently possible to be a voyeuristic extrovert, where, at the end of the day, what excites you is being around other people, but it's not necessarily that you want to interact with them, it's you want to observe them. So, I guess the point of this show is, you can be both and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being the kind of person who would rather sit at home eating Chinese takeout and watching Netflix at the end of the day, but who really enjoys getting up on stage and making people laugh. I said to my therapist probably about like 3 or 4 years ago, I said to him, I feel more at peace, and I feel more like myself performing in front of a crowd than I feel in the middle of that crowd. Like I like being on stage. I like people watching me do things, and I tend to get more comfortable. Like, yeah, you get a little stage fright. Everybody gets a little stage fright. But that, for me, wears off fairly quickly, usually after that first round of applause.